Scary Stories, Episode 5. Every night. At 3:03, someone or something walks past my house. Whistling every night. Regardless of the weather, someone or something walks down our street, whistling softly. You can hear it only from the living room or the kitchen as it passes the house, and it always happens at exactly 3:03 a.m. The sound begins faintly somewhere near the entrance to the cul-de-sac, close to the Carlson's house. We live near the middle of the street, so the whistling passes directly in front of us and then fades near the dead end. When my sister and I were younger, we sometimes sneaked into the kitchen to listen. Our parents did not approve, and we got in serious trouble if they caught us. Still, they never punished us too harshly because we always followed the most important rule: never try to see whoever is whistling. Our neighborhood is a strange place, but I love it. I have lived here since I was 6. The houses are small but well maintained. Everyone has a decent yard, and there are plenty of places to walk. A lot of kids my age live nearby. I turned 13 in October, and most of us grew up together, playing outside on summer evenings and running from one porch to another. It is a good place to spend your childhood, and I am old enough now to understand that. There are only 2 unusual things about our neighborhood: the nighttime whistling and the incredible amount of good luck. The whistling never bothered me much because I cannot hear it from my bedroom. My parents hate talking about it though, so eventually I stopped asking questions. My father is tall, strong, and usually very calm. He speaks with an accent because he moved to the United States when he was a child. His family, my grandparents, came from what they simply call the islands. The only time my father loses his composure is when someone mentions the whistling. He starts speaking faster, his eyes become restless, and he reminds us not to think about it too much. Then he repeats the rule: never look outside when the whistler passes. Even if we wanted to look, it would be difficult. Every window in our house has a special interior shutter made from thick, heavy fabric. It rolls down from the top and fastens to the bottom of the frame. Each latch is secured with a tiny lock, like the kind people put on diaries. Every night before bed, my father locks all the shutters and takes the key into his bedroom. I do not know what my mother truly thinks about the whistler. When we first moved here, I occasionally saw her sitting in the living room at 3:03. I watched through the narrow opening of my bedroom door. She did not do it often, or at least I rarely caught her, but once or twice a month, she would sit on our large red couch and simply listen. The whistler always performs the same tune, and strangely enough, it sounds cheerful. Remember when I said there were 2 unusual things about this place? Besides the whistler, everyone in our neighborhood is unbelievably lucky. It is difficult to explain, and my father dislikes discussing it, but good things constantly happen to the people who live here. Usually, the luck appears in small ways. Someone wins a radio contest. Someone receives an unexpected promotion. Someone finds ancient and valuable arrowheads while digging in the garden. The weather is almost always pleasant. Crime is practically non-existent. And every fall, the gardens bloom with unusually bright colors. A million little blessings. That is how my mother once described life here. The main reason we stayed, and the reason we moved here in the first place, was my sister, Nola. She was born extremely sick. Something was wrong with her lungs. We could not even bring her home after she was born. We could only visit her in the hospital. She was tiny, even compared with the other babies, and a machine breathed for her. We moved into this house to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we settled here, Nola began to improve. The doctors could not explain it. They credited the treatment, but it was obvious that they did not completely understand what had happened. My parents knew. Even I knew. Nola's recovery was one of the million little blessings the neighborhood had given us. So we stayed, even after learning that the little miracles sometimes came with a price. Something terrible happened only when a person tried to see the whistler. Our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. Whenever someone new moves in, the committee arrives with a baked pasta casserole, a gift basket, and a yellow folder filled with documents. They are extremely friendly. When we moved here 7 years ago, 4 members of the committee visited us. They chatted with my parents, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week outside the hospital, so they handled her very carefully. Then they asked to speak with my parents privately and sent me to my room. I still managed to overhear almost everything. The committee told my parents how wonderful the neighborhood was, so wonderful that it was difficult to describe. Then they discussed something even harder to explain: the whistling that began every night at exactly 3:03 and ended at exactly 3:05. Our new neighbors assured my parents that the sound was quiet and would never harm us, as long as we never tried to discover its source. They emphasized that point so strongly that I pressed my ear against the door to catch every word. People who tried to see the whistler stopped being lucky. Sometimes the consequences were fatal. A dark cloud seemed to follow them, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The yellow folder contained newspaper clippings about car accidents, ruined lives, public deaths, and bizarre disasters. Not all of them die, I heard the head of the committee tell my father. But the life leaves them. Even when they survive, there is no light inside them anymore. It is as if they are no longer fully present in this world. My mother did not take the warning seriously. She kept asking whether this was some elaborate prank they played on all new residents. Eventually, she became angry and accused them of trying to frighten us into leaving. She even asked whether it had something to do with my father being from the islands. My father calmed her down. He said that he could tell these people were sincere and genuinely trying to help. He explained that he had grown up hearing stories like this from his own mother. He knew that strange beings sometimes walked among us. Some were good, some were evil, and some were simply different. After the committee left, my father went to the hardware store. He bought heavy fabric shutters, latches, and locks, and installed them on every window after dinner. On our first night in the new house, I left my bedroom at 3 a.m. and discovered that my father was still awake. He was sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. He placed a finger against his lips, telling me to stay quiet, then patted the cushion beside him. I sat down, and we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistle. It began and ended precisely as the neighbors had described. The whistler has returned every night since then. We have never tried to see what makes the sound, and we have continued enjoying our million little blessings. Nola now breathes on her own. She has grown into a strong, intelligent girl. My father joined the welcoming committee. New residents are rare because almost nobody wants to leave. But whenever someone does move in, my father and the committee bring them a pasta casserole, a gift basket, and a yellow folder. I can always tell from my father's face whether the new residents believed the warning or whether the committee will soon be welcoming another family into the same house. Recently, a new family moved into the house next door. The previous owner, Miss Maddie, had died at the age of 105 after a long and happy life. The new neighbors seemed to fit in perfectly. They believed the committee and followed my father's advice about locking the shutters, especially because they had a young child. My father never showed us the newspaper clippings inside the yellow folder, but they must have been convincing. The family had no problems during their first month. One evening, the parents went out of town, and their son Holden stayed overnight at our house. He was 12 and 1 grade below me. I barely knew him before that night, but the moment his parents left after dinner, I realized we were going to have a terrible evening. "Do you know who whistles out there every night?" Holden asked as soon as the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the living room while a Disney movie played quietly on television. My sister and I exchanged a look. "We do not talk about that," I said. "I think it is that strange man in the big yellow house on the corner," Holden said. "Mr. Tolles?" Nola asked. "But he is nice." Holden shrugged. "Then maybe it is some kind of serial killer." Nola became tense. "We do not talk about it," I repeated. "Let us go to my room and play Nintendo." We spent the next few hours playing video games, eating popcorn, and watching movies. It was an ordinary sleepover, except that Holden could not sit still. After my parents wished us goodnight, locked the shutters, and went to bed, Holden climbed out of his beanbag chair and walked over to Nola and me, who were sitting on my bed. "Have you ever tried to look?" he asked. It is almost time. Like children at every sleepover, we had completely ignored the idea of going to sleep. I checked the clock and was surprised to see that he was right. It was almost 3. I have not, and you should not either, I said. See, I cannot even try at my house, Holden interrupted. My father locks the shutters every night and hides the key. Good, Nola said. No, Holden replied. He does not hide it. You have watched him lock them, I said, more sharply than I intended. Holden smiled. He locks the shutters, but he keeps the key on his regular keyring. So what? I asked, although I already understood. I had noticed that my father no longer bothered hiding the key. After 7 years, he trusted that we understood the danger. Well, after your father locked the shutters, but before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom. On the way, I might have looked into their room. I might have seen your father's keys on the nightstand, and I might have borrowed them. Nola and I stared at him. His smile widened. You are lying, I said. Holden shrugged. Holden, check if you want. Open your parents' bedroom door and look at the nightstand. You will not see the keys. Stay here, I ordered. Neither of you move. I hurried toward my parents' room but stopped in front of the door. If Holden was telling the truth, my father would be furious. More than furious. The thought frightened me. But the idea of an open window with the Whistler directly outside frightened me even more. I opened the bedroom door about an inch and looked inside, but the room was too dark to see. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. 2 steps into the darkness, I froze. I could hear the whistling clearly from my parents' bedroom. I had never thought about it before, but that meant they had heard it every night since we moved into the house. They never talked about it. I did not think I could sleep, knowing it was that close. I stood there listening as the sound approached, uncertain whether I should turn on the light or wake my father. Quiet movement from the living room pulled me back to reality. Nola! I shouted, running from the bedroom. Holden and Nola stood beside the front door near the window. Holden had not lied. I saw him working the tiny lock on one of the shutters. The lock clicked. He really had the key. Holden laughed softly. Nola stood beside him with her shoulders hunched. She looked terrified, but also curious. The whistling was directly outside our walls. I think I shouted something, but I cannot remember what. Time seemed to stop. The hands of the clock might as well have been nailed in place. Then I was moving. I am not fast and have never been athletic, but somehow I crossed the room in an instant. I reached Nola, wrapped my arms around her, and turned us so that she faced the hallway instead of the window. At the same moment, I squeezed my eyes shut, and the shutter snapped upward. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola trembling in my arms. Do not look, okay? I told her. Do not turn around. She faced the hallway. I faced the window, but my eyes remained closed. I held her tighter and reached out with my free hand, trying to find Holden. My fingers touched his arm. He was shaking even harder than Nola. Holden, I called. Silence. Without opening my eyes, I carefully felt along the glass. It was cold, far too cold for that time of year. As I moved my hand upward, the glass became warmer, and a faint vibration traveled into my fingertips. I tried not to imagine what might be standing on the other side of the window. Finally, I found the pull cord and yanked it down. The shutter slammed shut. I opened my eyes. In the weak light coming from the kitchen, I saw Holden. He looked pale and strangely small, as if he had collapsed inward. Then he screamed. Everything happened at once. The hallway light came on, then the living room light. My parents' footsteps pounded across the wooden floor. I did not turn toward them because I could not take my eyes off Holden. His face was as white as the wall. He had bitten his lower lip so hard that a thin line of bright red blood ran down his chin. He had also wet himself. What happened? My father asked behind me. I forced myself to turn away from Holden. He looked, I said. I had never seen my father frightened before. In that moment, his face filled with pure, violent parental terror. He silently formed the words, "Only him?" I nodded. My father exhaled. For 1 second, he changed so completely that I thought he might laugh with relief. Then he looked at Holden, and the relief vanished. I wondered whether he felt guilty for having experienced it. Someone knocked on the front door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Do not open it," my mother said from the hallway. I had always assumed she was skeptical and merely supported my father. That night, every one of us believed. Both of my parents were holding baseball bats. They must have brought them from the bedroom. The knocking came again, slightly louder. "Please do not open it," Holden whispered. My father walked over and embraced him. "We will not," he promised, tightening his grip on the bat. "Nothing is entering this house tonight." The pounding became so violent that the door shook. Holden screamed again. Nola grabbed me, and my mother ran over and wrapped her arms around both of us. "Call the police," my mother whispered to my father. The pounding stopped immediately. My father looked back over his shoulder. "Do you think—" he began. A new knock interrupted him. First came one enormous impact, then 3 slow, polite taps. "Police," someone said from the other side of the door. The voice sounded exactly like my mother's. It repeated her words like a parrot. "Police. Call the police. Police." My mother pulled us closer. "Police. Police. Police. Please stop," she whispered. "I do not think calling the police will help," my father said. "How would we know whether they were really the ones at the door?" The pounding returned, stronger than before. The door trembled. Then everything stopped again. After a long pause, someone knocked on the back door. We all turned toward it. The moment our heads moved, another knock came from the front. Front door, back door, front door again. Loud, then soft, then loud. Suddenly, both doors shook at the same time. The impacts became massive and heavy, as if someone were striking the wood with a sledgehammer. Then tapping began across every window and wall at once. It sounded as if we were trapped inside a drum while a dozen drummers played different rhythms around us, or as if our house were a turtle shell and something outside was trying to tear us from it. "Stop!" Holden screamed. The noise ceased. "I will not tell anyone," he whispered, staring at the door. "I promise I will not tell anyone what I saw. Just go away." We waited almost a full minute. Then we heard a soft, gentle tapping from the window Holden had opened. He sobbed and collapsed into uncontrollable, hysterical crying, like a prisoner watching someone build the gallows outside his cell. My father held him tightly and ran his fingers through his damp hair. He did not lie. He did not tell Holden that everything would be okay. The soft tapping continued all night. We huddled together in the living room for hours. At one point, my mother tried to take us children into my bedroom while my father guarded the door. The moment we crossed the threshold, the pounding returned, violent and deafening. I was afraid the front door would break apart. We immediately returned to the living room. The pounding stopped, leaving only the quiet tapping at the window. None of us truly slept. The tapping ended at around 7 in the morning, close to sunrise in our neighborhood. We waited another 2 hours before my father was willing to open one of the shutters. First, he ordered everyone into my parents' bedroom. I heard him open the front door, close it again, and return. "All right," he said. "It is over." Holden's parents returned close to noon. My mother and father walked him home and spent a long time speaking with his family inside the house. Nola and I watched from our window. She never left my side and occasionally held my hand. When our parents returned, they looked grim, but they did not tell us what they had discussed. It was Sunday. We spent the rest of the day together, ordered pizza, and watched movies. That night, all of us slept in my room. Nola and my mother shared the bed beside me, while my father sat in a chair he had dragged in from another room. We barely saw Holden or his parents during the following week. By Thursday, a moving truck had appeared outside their house. After school, We watched them pack all afternoon. What I remember most is the way Holden and his parents looked. All three wore the same exhausted, hollow expression. Even from across the street, I could tell that something was deeply wrong. Before sunset, Holden and his family were gone. I remembered what the welcoming committee told my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who sees the Whistler dies. But even if they survive, the light inside them disappears, and the rest of their life becomes a chain of small tragedies. I think Holden's parents looked at it too. Maybe they did it to comfort him because they did not believe. Or maybe they believed and wanted to share the burden with him. Now I look at Nola, small, cheerful, and alive, and wonder what would have happened if I had hesitated. What if she had looked? What if I had looked too, hoping to comfort her or share the burden? I am glad I never had to find out. We still live in this house and in this neighborhood. We still hear the Whistler pass every night. The luck, blessings, and gentle miracles are too tempting for us to leave, so we remain careful. We no longer invite friends to sleep over. My father now hides the shutter key extremely well. Not that I want to know where he keeps it. Some things are better left unknown. I found my wife's obituary online. The problem is that she is sitting beside me. I constantly search the internet when I am bored. I look up people, conspiracy theories, and random online nonsense. I have searched my own name, the names of friends, and the names of people I barely know. Last night, for the first time, I searched my wife's name and found something I will never forget. The first result was an obituary. Of course, I assumed it belonged to someone with the same name. My wife's first name is Emily, and her last name is fairly common. I will not include it here because I do not want anyone identifying us. I clicked the link out of curiosity, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw the photograph. It was my wife. Light hair with sun-bleached strands, dark eyes, and the same familiar smile. The dates were 1986 to 2021. "What are you looking at?" I jumped. My wife had entered from the kitchen and sat beside me. I automatically slammed the laptop shut. "Nothing," I said. Then I realized how suspicious that looked and added, "I was searching for a birthday present for you." For 1 second, her face became completely still. I was afraid she did not believe me. Then she smiled, the warm smile I loved, with tiny lines at the corners of her eyes. "That is so sweet," she said, moving closer. "Yeah." She leaned against me, but I felt deeply uncomfortable. The warmth of her skin no longer felt familiar or comforting. Instead, a chill traveled down my back. After a few minutes, I pulled away. "I do not feel well," I lied. "I am going upstairs to lie down." "Oh, all right," she said, making a disappointed face. Before she could say anything else, I hurried upstairs. The moment I reached the bed, I opened the obituary again on my phone. I stared at the grainy image of her face. It was definitely Emily. The same warm smile, the same mysterious dark eyes. It could not be anyone else. I scrolled through the other search results and discovered that several were also connected to her death. There was a memorial page on Facebook. Friends had left messages mourning her. I did not recognize any of their names, but the posts made it clear that they had been grieving for more than 10 years. Even the university where she had worked had released a statement offering condolences. Then I found something near the bottom of the search results that made my stomach drop. Emily had not simply died. She had been murdered. I stared at the article, unable to process what I was reading. Individual phrases jumped out at me. No sign of forced entry, partially dismembered, killer still at large. The article contained no photograph. Maybe it was another Emily. It had to be another Emily, not my Emily, who was downstairs watching television at that very moment. A creaking sound pulled me from my thoughts. The bedroom door slowly opened. Emily stood motionless in the doorway. The hallway light was off, and her face disappeared into shadow. "Emily?" My voice shook. "I came to check on you," she said in a quiet, cold voice. "Thank you." I quickly turned off my phone and hid it behind my back. I feel much better now. Everything is fine. I am glad to hear that, she said, even more softly as she climbed into bed beside me. I tried to remain calm. When she wrapped her arms around me, I shivered from the cold. I love you, baby, she whispered, settling comfortably against me. I love you too. And now I am here, writing this on my phone while Emily sleeps beside me. I do not know whether I am safe. I do not know who or what I am dealing with. Insane theories keep appearing in my mind. Maybe Emily had a twin sister who died, and she somehow took her place. Maybe she is some creature from an old folktale that murdered Emily and assumed her appearance. The longer the night continues, the more ridiculous my theories become, but none of them make sense. I am certain of only one thing. Whoever is lying beside me is not the real Emily. Thank you very much for watching, my friend. While you change your underwear, turn on the Scary Stories playlist and keep listening. Hugs. Bye.